I'm Gina. Thanks for coming out on this beautiful day and taking some time to tune into the exhibition and some of the stories and images here. I'm from Bristol originally, and I've been in Glasgow since about 2014. And this particular, I guess my link into this piece of work, if you like, was I was still down in London at the point at which I met Paul. Paul was working on a film called Dispossession, the great social housing swindle. And I was working with different communities in London who were going through the process of, they were living in social housing and they were essentially being relocated and displaced. So I was doing some sort of long-term work down there, visiting and documenting what was happening, sort of the landscapes and the people, and, you know, kind of trying to get a sense, a visual of what was happening. And so I met Paul, I think it was through social media actually, on Twitter, and I saw that he was making this film, and so I got in contact and I said, oh, you know, if you need any pictures, I might have some that you could use. And from there, from Twitter, I think that's how we kind of started talking. And he, from the Dispossession film, there came a book and another project called Invisible Britain, so I was commissioned then to do a portrait for that book. And time elapsed, and then this other commission came up, which was the work that you see now in this separated aisle. So we were given a very short brief, explaining much as you've kind of seen on the information board, really, about what the nature of it was about. Paul being biracial, British Chinese, was really wanting to explore what it meant to be British at this point in our history. And so I kind of jumped at the chance, obviously. But I did have concerns, because I knew very much that Paul wanted it to be photographs of people who were underrepresented, and also, as much as he could, to use photographers whose work was perhaps, or photographers who weren't able to, what am I trying to say? Underrepresented photographers, perhaps, as well as more well-known photographers. So I knew kind of like accessibility was an issue, and I thought, oh, am I really the right person to do this right now? And, you know, and I was kind of working and family, and I'm thinking, you know, what do I, you know, as a kind of white British person, what can I bring to the table, you know? And so I guess there was a little bit of soul searching in that respect, you know, what can I do? And also, but then also weighing that up with the fact of, well, actually, what can anybody do with just one image? And this is an opportunity, and I've been asked, and so if I've got, you know, if I can find a way to contribute to the story in a meaningful way, then I should do it. So I took it up, and the piece that in fact, you know what? I was going to read a little bit from the book. I don't know if you've seen this book at all. If you've read some of the stuff, if you don't mind, I just thought the foreword by Kit DeWall really kind of says more than I can say about the experience of being British and some of the challenges in that. So if you don't mind, I'll just read a couple of paragraphs from it. We're mixed-race children watching the Olympics. The 400-yard sprint. There's a white runner from Birmingham and one from Cork, a tall woman from St Kitts, and a couple of African Americans. Who to cheer for? Who do we want to win? Who comes top in our allegiances? In other words, who are we? We've never met anyone with our exact racial mix, but we have one another, 5 of us. We're a tribe of our own, and in this respect, at least, we are seen and understood. We're not invisible. Then you grow up, and the allegiances, the assumptions are thrust at you. The vote, the passport, Brexit. You find that when you turn up for a job, you're black, and when you're driving at night, you're black, and when you challenge the neighbour, you're black, and sometimes you're a redskin and not black enough. When you speak, you're working class, you're from the Midlands and therefore not northern, your Chewy accent means you're uneducated, and Irish, you say, aren't they terrorists? And so on, until being seen for who you truly are becomes a rarity, and you're reduced to shorthand and convenience, code switching for all you're worth. How we are identified and seen by others is, of course, all down to who those others are. And I think within that, it really kind of gets to the crux of, who are we when we're looking at other people, and what are we bringing to that, our level of understanding. And I think it's always imperfect and incomplete, and I don't really think that an image can communicate that. I find that the images sat next to the text start to work on a whole different level, and it's through engaging with the book really that I feel that those stories come to the fore. So I'll try and say a little bit about my part in this project, which was to photograph this guy, Donald Archibald Brown. Everybody kind of worked independently, so I can, after I've spoken about this one for a little bit, I can say a little bit about some of the other portraits, but it's harder for me to talk about it as a whole exhibition. So Donald Archibald Brown, he was born on Tiree in a Hebrides, western part of Scotland. My connection with Tiree was my partner and our family. We worked out there. My partner's a medic, and so he provided emergency medical care to the islands. And so we would go out with him 1 week a month. Got 3 small children, and we were going out there from when they were very young. So we were part of the community because we were useful and we were accepted, and everybody was, really welcoming to us. But there was no way that we were part of the community at all. And that was not in a bad way. It was just, we were just very clear on what our role and purpose was there. And so I sort of, I knew some people that I'd met through the parent groups and other people kind of my age and stuff. And we were slowly starting to kind of get involved out there, and the kids were going to the local nursery when we had time. But I was finding it harder to get to know some of the older people, and there's such great kind of community spirit out there in terms of people looking after each other and like multi-generational families. I was really keen when I was asked to take part in the project. I thought, well, wouldn't that be great if I could somehow speak with an older Tiree person who's been here and really seen it change. And then I'm trying to think when I took the portrait, I can't quite remember, but I think it was in between lockdowns. And so we'd had a period where people just hadn't really been getting together, and it was all quite, hadn't maybe been able to do as much kind of getting to know people as I would have liked. Anyway, Donald, I asked around some of the local people, and I said, I was kind of wary about, I knew that it would be published, I knew that it might go in a gallery on a wall, so I had a sense of, the power I was holding, I guess, in terms of being the image maker in this situation. And I wanted to make sure that it wasn't, that I didn't, I just wanted to make sure that that was clear, and that whoever was saying yes to having a portrait and having their interview taken knew exactly where it would be seen, and that. So somebody suggested that I get in contact with Donald. He's called DA. They said, oh, DA, I'd love to take part. He's really he's dead up for it. A couple of other people also sort of sprang up as well, maybe quite well-known characters who'd been interviewed a bit more. So I was kind of more interested in Donald, who'd been on the island his whole life, had been in the Navy, and I met him. It was a day like today, and I went to his bungalow, which is, I can't pronounce the name of the beach. It's in Gaelic, but it's a beautiful kind of windswept part of it's all windswept. Beautiful windswept part of Tiree where they do the windsurfing competition. I was going down this bumpy road and kind of pulled into his driveway, and there's little greenhouse and a scarecrow and a British flag, and then also a national flag as well. So I was like, this is going to be interesting. Because I didn't really kind of go with any preconception. I wasn't sure which way the interview was going to go, and Paul had given us all photographers the same questions to ask, and it was really lovely. He brought me into his home and gave me a cup of tea, and we sat down and at his table, and we just started chatting, and I was probably there for about 2 hours. And he was in good health. After 10 minutes of chatting at the table and stuff, and talking, and me explaining about what it was about and how it would be seen, and I showed him the previous book as well. He was dead up for it, and really kind of just, I think he was 93 there. Very confident man, and sharing and generous with his time and opinions, and just, I think this says a lot more about him. And
his dog.
And his dog. So, and I think as well there's something about the romanticism of the islands, and like us as a family going out there and thinking, oh, what's life on Tiree going to be like? And then actually, just realising all that romantic stuff is not really what it's about. But you, as a photographer, you could still spin that story if you wanted to, couldn't you? And I was thinking of Paul Strand's work in South Uist. And I think, those kind of like, they're almost decontextualized against the background, and it's kind of like weathered, gnarly people in black and white. And so part of me was like, oh, but no, I wanted to, I guess you go open and you see what happens, and it wasn't too pre-visualized. So then he started showing me around his house as well, and this was his chair, and we shot a few here, and then we went back to the kitchen and did the interview. So I can read you a little bit from the interview if you'd like to hear more of his own words rather than me. But I think for me it's a very kind of it's a very straightforward portrait. I try not to like intervene too much.
I think that's what makes it great.
Yeah.
I was saying that from Alvin when I came in and the look round.
Yeah.
That's what I think. The quote underneath, it's almost like he's saying that to you in the
Yeah.
moment of the conversation in his own space. I like that.
Yeah. And I think that it's a sense of a person's own space, isn't it? That whether it's in Tiree or Manchester or Bristol, it's just, could be anywhere almost. Sadly, he passed away less than a month ago, actually. So, yeah.
Have you seen his portrait before?
Yes, so I'd sent him the portrait, I'd sent him the book. He knew, so and that's the thing, you kind of, you meet somebody once or twice and then you're out of their life, but there they are on the gallery wall. So when I found out that he died, I got in contact via some people that I knew on the island, and just said, look, this is going up in the gallery today, of all days, and it was very close to when he passed away. Because I was a bit unsure as to what I should do, but his daughter actually got in contact and said how proud he was to have been included, and to know that his portrait was in one of Glasgow's galleries. And she's been in and seen the portrait as well, and she thinks it's a really lovely one of him, and it's very much kind of sums him up. I won't try and do a Scottish accent. I was born and brought up on Tiree. I left here when I was 16. I've been around the world for about 18 years, but back nearly every year to Tiree, back home. It didn't matter where I was, whether I was in Australia, New Zealand or Japan. You always think of your home. You're more Scottish when you're away than when you're here. Whether it's here or on the mainland, I've seen a lot of change. I don't like the Scottish flag for one reason. The Scottish National Party have taken it over as their flag. Some of the flags have even got a bit in the middle with the SNP on it, which really should be illegal. For someone like myself who's been all over the world, to become a nationalist would be very wrong. I was never nationalist or racist. I sailed. It didn't matter where you went. Once you signed up, it was never Scottish or English, it was British. On my naval card, I had that for 20 odd years. My nationality was British. You weren't supposed to talk about Scotland or England because the nationalists were always in the background, and they're actually worse now than they were then. They've got to keep it quiet, because like anything else, you get the gangs who go around in the streets of Southern Ireland and Northern Ireland, and they're coming to Scotland to fight amongst themselves because they can't get away with it in Ireland. In my young days, you were taught Gaelic till the minute you left primary school. There was very little English. It was Gaelic in the home all the time. In those days in Tiree, there was no work, just paid crofts, small farms, under 100 acres, mostly arable land. There were about 2 or 3 big crofts, and if you were in with a factor, you were all right. Of course, everything was done from Inverary, the Duke of Argyll. People were poor, but everybody was happy in those days because they were all the same. So yeah, if you haven't had a read already of the book, yeah, it really kind of brings a lot of the portraits to life. I'm really drawn to this portrait of, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Uche in Newham, photographed by Mark Davenant. And it's really more on a visual level. There's something in the composition and the lighting that it kind of reminds me of that kind of Rembrandt style lighting, the Vermeer, the girl with the pearl earring I'm thinking of, and the big headpiece. But I love that it's kind of like, you know, the contrast between the Adidas and the, you know, globalization versus the more traditional fabric, at least. I'm not sure about the style of the headdress, but this more kind of like traditional African fabric. And also she has the pearl earring on as well. So there's loads of like visual codes here that I'm just loving how they come together. And I like her kind of, yeah, her sort of openness, the pose. And there are a few pictures within the gallery that I really like that kind of, that sort of proud, forward-looking pose, as a contrasted with maybe where people appear a little bit more downbeat, or this feels more kind of, yeah, well, even actually maybe the contrast between the two there, I feel more comfortable looking into her eyes than I do in his eyes, because of the angle that I'm being asked to look at them for. I don't know how you find that kind of comparison. I mean, obviously they're very different images.
Yeah, but making the viewer feel uncomfortable can be a device. Cindy Sherman does that a lot, makes you look at her in a way that you probably don't want to.
Yes, yeah. So yes, so this one, again, I can't really say a huge amount about the process of taking this or anything, so I was just going to pick out some of the ones that I was really drawn to. The next one's Celeste Bell, taken in Hastings by Lisa Wormsley. And what I really love the kind of the composition here, and the sort of the drawing you in, but then punctuated with this division of the yellow pillar there, as she kind of stares out to sea. She's almost a bit of a Venus kind of character with the hair wrapped around her. And I didn't know much about polystyrene, but this is, I believe, polystyrene's daughter, Celeste Bell, and Paul, who's created this exhibition. He's recently made a documentary to do with polystyrene, I Am Cliché. I don't know if any of you have seen it. I've not seen it yet. I really wanted to. But yeah, so this is her daughter. And in the interview within the book, she talks about how she grew up in maybe what we would call a commune, and that it was very kind of not British of that time, and that it was very just in the wilds, and with kind of beautiful surroundings, and it was a very international community that she grew up in. And then she found herself back in a British primary school or secondary school, I'm not entirely sure which one, and how difficult she found that, and this kind of division. So as soon as she could, she left Britain, and for her, she was saying the feeling is that it was better to feel like a proper outsider than to just feel half in, half out. So yeah, that's another one that I feel is a very kind of strong image. The one of the guy at the back there, I really like. Owen Hazley by Kira Leeming, and again, it's the composition. It just kind of cuts straight to it. It's very sort of it's almost confrontational, but it's not, because of the softness in his expression. I love the sort of the central positioning, and maybe the way it challenges some of that kind of stereotyping of black men. That it's, yeah, the softness and the kind of the directness and with which he's communicating to you. And his story, it's quite hard to understand, really. So believe his mum was Jamaican, and he came over with her as a young, as a 4-year-old with his family. And he never got fully settled status. And then in his 20s, after getting into sort of some trouble as a younger man, he found himself being threatened with deportation back to Jamaica, which is just kind of crazy, being as he's very much British person. And so he kind of, in the book, he talks about some of that experience of feeling just very unsettled and unsure, and then embarrassed and unable to be able to tell his friends what was going on for him at that time.